have an approval of the agenda. First of all, we have regrets from Kathy, she's on vacation, and Roderick, work. And the rest of us are here. So we'll have a motion for approval of the agenda.
I'd like to add an item.
Ms. Shorten,
Could we put the, I think we call them the tourism flags? If that can go on your business arising from the minutes, or you can, business, if that pleases the chair.
under J,
Under the 5, number 5, business arising,
okay, yes.
if you,
Yeah.
think Yuli comes out.
On
Thank you.
the- Okay, any conflicts? Seeing none?
So move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. We have no presentations this evening. So we'll adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of June the 13th. Any errors or omissions?
So move.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Negative, nay. Motion carried. Committee of the Whole, June 27th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Bigger fonts. Business arising from the minutes. And I'll turn that over to CAO AMA News.
So I can just say that the items that are on, I just lost my place there. Okay, there it is. The items that are on business arising include and are not on the agenda for today for decision, seeing as this is a special meeting. So the summer is the use for the Nikhil van. We have asked, just a quick update, we've asked for additional clarification from Gail Kaiser, the manager for Nikhil Home, regarding insurance costs. And so we have not received that information. That is ongoing. After that, we'd have a little bit more information to share with you around what the potential uses for these vans could be. The core group, a smaller group of staff have met and talked about some of the options, but we're not prepared to present options to you at this time because a lot of it depends on insurance. So, and the issue is their deductible is very large, and so those deductibles can be reduced, but that comes at a cost, and so we just have to determine what that is. We have other organizations that do transportation in Argyle, including a councillor that does that type of transportation, so we're just examining other options for that van. The garbage collection costs, I can confirm that the work is ongoing, not completed, with the Director of Finance on leave. It has delayed the results. I may take that on myself to make sure that you have that information. And the East Pubnico playground, there was supposed to be a meeting inside the community, or the intent was to have a meeting with community members, and that has not transpired as of yet. So those are the three brief updates on that, and I believe Councillor Surratt has another item.
Yes. Go
The
ahead.
other, if you don't mind.
Go ahead,
Chair.
Councillor Surratt.
Just want to know if how the tourism flags at the 15 tourism sites are making out, if we're making any progress. I thought I had understood towards the end of July, but nothing was firm, and I don't know if it would be Chris or Anna that would have an update where we're at. I've had questions this past week, that's why.
Yeah, I can respond to that.
Sure.
And I've also received phone calls in the office about the welcome pole banners.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're still in the queue of the printers. The order was made June 22nd with kind of 150 events and other things like that. We're in the queue. That's all unfortunately I've been able to get from the printers that we've been dealing with.
You don't have an ETA type of thing?
We don't, unfortunately. That's as much as I can.
Nope. That's
offer
fair.
at this time.
Can I just ask, oh, sorry.
No.
Can I just ask for clarification? You're in the queue of the printers?
Yeah,
like
orders.
The business itself?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's what I meant, sorry.
No,
So obviously our intention was to put them up as soon, and it was, and I said it myself, that we practically had promised them to be up this summer, and that's something that I unfortunately doesn't look like we'll be able to do this year. Obviously, if they do come in and we do have time, we'll try to put them up, but that's the update I can provide at this time.
That's great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So move on to our councilors' reports. We'll start with whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Councillor Muse?
Yes, just want to
Deputy
say,
Warden Muse?
just want to say that I attended the Réseau des Villes in Quebec. It was a good conference, well attended by, it covers people from the States and all across Canada. And they had some very good ideas how to promote for tourism and promote our culture and our Acadian culture. The only thing, and I find that in a lot of conferences that I go to in the cities where it's covering more than just a small municipalities and areas, that a lot of their ideas, I find, are geared more towards the big cities. They were talking more about what Quebec could do, what Lafayette could do, you know, and it was like we were left out almost as far as smaller. So we got together with New Brunswick, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and I think we have to start working together to try and get something going with them. And I think the leaders in there saw the frustration from the smaller areas, and hopefully that maybe they will start their thinking more to include more than just what the big cities and that can afford. But it was a very good conference. I mean, made a lot of contacts and you know. So anyway, that's basically it. And we had a meeting, and I think that's probably going to be discussed, CAO for the airport. That's all, yeah, okay, so I won't go into that. Okay, and that's all I have.
Councillor Albright?
Took part in a few different things this summer, but one of the ones that I wanted to highlight was the Tusket tour that was offered by the archives, the courthouse and the archives for the municipality, and it was Don Pache who did a tour of Tusket, and it was actually Councillor D'Entremont who was driving the bus, and Deputy Warden Muse was there as well. And it was a 3-hour session anyway. It was a 3-hour tour of Tusket, and it was really, really well done. And I was really proud that, you know, we were part of that we had something to do with that. So hopefully it'll be something that happens again next summer.
Great.
Yeah, well done. And it was full. It filled up. They were going to have a 1-day tour, and it filled up in no time. They had to have a second.
My mom and dad went for the second day and they enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's very well done.
Yeah, Patsy went. She
Yeah,
enjoyed
she was
it,
there.
yes.
She enjoyed it.
Anybody else? It's been a slow summer.
Other than what we already have on the agenda that we're gonna speak about later, I did attend on June 22nd, but we actually haven't had a council's report since June 22nd, the Western Ren AGM, which was held in Barrington this year. Most likely because Barrington is the newest addition to the Western Ren. We're quite grateful that they were willing to join the Ren, so it was held in Barrington. There's 3 new board members at the board level, obviously for the Ren. Benjamin Shearer and Jamie Simmons and Misty Morrison were chosen by recruitment and nomination committee, which I was part of with Ben Cleveland and Mayor Pam Mood. Mayor Ben Cleveland and Mayor Pam Mood, as well as Eddie Nickerson. So they were the choices. I wasn't as involved as they were because namely Yarmouth had a lot of representation already, like I shouldn't say Yarmouth, but the Yarmouth centralized area had a lot of representation already on the AGM board, so we wanted to, we had different demographics that we're looking for, like there was a system put in place by the employees of the Ren to, you know, key aspects that we were looking for, like if we lacked in law, you know, maybe a lawyer or something like this, you know, different demographics. So those are the names chosen, one from the Digby area because we were lacking in the Digby area, and then as well 2 additions from Barrington because they're They're just recently joined. So we added a couple extra board members. The board is now 2 members larger than it was before. So that was June 22nd. It's been so long, and I don't have my notes in front of me, so the actual topics at the AGM, I wish I could spiel off for you, but I can't off the top of my head. Other than that, this weekend is Wedgeport's 250th celebration. This Saturday and Sunday, some festivities going on, unveiling of a new monument there. It'll be a great event, which I will regretfully not be able to attend. I've got a wedding in Toronto. My girlfriend's sister's getting married, and I was sternly told that that's what I was attending. I guess if you guys can make it, it would be appreciated for sure by the community. That's it.
Anybody else?
Just probably a little update from the waste park. We've ordered an excavator. Our excavator was at the end of its useful life. We have the money in the bank to purchase it. The old excavator, the tracks, what holds the tracks together were starting to break. You had it welded a bunch of times. Anyhow, there's an excavator in the process of being ordered. The other item on is the cotton mill. They've started to take the cotton mill apart, and is going to fill one of the C&D cells, going to top it off, and from what they're hauling, almost 10 or 12 trucks a day of bricks and all kinds of material. We may be looking, it looks like, to fill the other cell about half of the other cell. So down the road, probably in another year, we could be looking at another cell to plan on, which is a lot of money, but anyhow, just to let you know, that's basically what's going on. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Diallo.
On July 28th, I attended the Acadian Odyssey, unveiling the monument in West Pubnico. It was very well attended. Many guest speakers from the province, from the feds, municipality, even our journalist in the gallery was front and center, Mr. Norbert Leblanc. So it was very well organized and put together. And I commend all the people who did it. It was, I guess for me, coming from West Pubnico and being a proud West Pubnicoer, it was nice to see the monument in West Pubnico in front of the Acadian Museum. So, thank you.
Councillor Deaton.
Sorry, Glenn.
My friend Councillor beat me to the Odyssey Monument, the unveiling. It was very nice. It is a very nice monument. I know a lot of people worked hard to get it into the West Pubnico area, and it's nice for anyone to drop in and see it. It really is a beautiful piece of art and represents a lot of history and that of what went on, what took place, and that. And so that was another thing that we attended, the Odyssey Monument. Shane Pumpku Days, attended some of the stuff that went on there. And a couple of things that's going on that we should thank our recreation department for. They had kayak evening down home, and it was well attended by a lot of ladies. It was an evening for ladies kayaking, and that was put on by the Argyle Recreation. And last evening they had Chopped Argyle, it was called, down there. And they had some people presenting some of the meals that they cooked, or some of the pastries that they cooked, and they had some judges there that came to judge these meals or these pastries, and that it was really well attended for the first one. And the people that put it on again was Argyle Recreation, and they're doing a lot of stuff. So it's nice to see these things going on in the community. That was just one that my wife and my grandson and I attended that last night. And there was a lot of, if you hear of another one going on, attend it, because there's a lot of stuff to eat. So I got along well at it. It was well attended. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess there's no more councillors, so there'll be no more reports. Well, I'd just like to mention that I'll be in Wedgeport on Saturday. And I'd like to thank Deputy Warden Danny, who's filled in for a couple social functions for me this summer. And you can see my report. Most of it's been mentioned, except me and Alan attended a meeting in Barrington to talk about possible funding from Barrington for the track and field on a small scale. There hasn't been any follow-up on that I know of. Airport follow-up meeting, what else hasn't been meeting? I went to the Cat Ferry Industry Day. We had the transportation and infrastructure meeting that most of us was a part of. Drummond Heights graduation, Nova Scotia Health Authority, again in Barrington, which was very informative. I attended several functions at the Argyle Bucket Festival, and last week we had a building committee meeting, which we'll be talking about here shortly. So if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them, but I thought it was gonna be a relatively slow summer, but it's been actually quite busy. Staff report. Do we have none this month?
I didn't ask the staff to contribute, largely because everybody's going every which way. I just wanted to make it clear to everyone, we have a couple of, we have one leave in the admin side. Director of Finance is on a short-term leave, so that's during the taxation season, so that has presented some challenges, and so the staff, the admin staff as well as support staff outside of the admin and CAO groups have pitched in to help where we can. So there's some of the things that it's difficult for us to assign, and of the things that can be assigned, the staff is doing very, very well, and it certainly it has challenged all of us to kind of pick up a little bit, and so everybody's helping each other. That was a really good and positive sign that we're all kind of picking up. Where I'm spending my time, just so that you're aware, is a lot of work has been done on the Airport Corporation as of late. As you know, there's certain reports that have been generated, and since that time, there's been some visits from regulatory bodies, and so there's a lot that is there's a transformation going on at the airport, and so as owners, you will be asked to participate in short-term and long-term decisions in that area. I have spent some time with residents in their second year for the family residency program. I was approached by one of the potential physicians, not a physician yet, but he's in his second year, along with two of his colleagues, and they're just asking questions about what their probabilities would be in staying here. And what I learned was that they want to stay here. They want to stay here very badly, and so we have an opportunity to make that happen. And so we don't have full control over how that happens, but we can play a very significant part from a community perspective. So I just had an initial conversation with them and talked to them about the fact that we're building a new building in Tuscan, and that while the design isn't completed, one of the things that had been noted by many was an incubation or a business corner where people could go for a short period or even a longer period of time to utilize our building. So I think that and other areas in the community of Tuscan and other communities can present opportunities for them to work collaboratively. Now, obviously, we do have capacity in the Pubnico clinic, so that remains an option for them. So it was a very, very interesting conversation. Three absolutely wonderful young, two men and one woman, just great people, like just really good. So and they have connections, or they have spouses with connections in the area. So that was really positive. I thought I would share that. I've also attended, I've been asked as the Vice President of AMA to attend what's called municipal modernization meetings, and the words might be new, but the conversation is the same. The conversation is about, what's the future of municipalities, and so, what are our challenges, what's happened. There's like 8 reports since 1949 that say we should have less municipalities, and so the conversation isn't about amalgamation, it's about regional collaboration, because while we have it good, I think, around regional collaboration. We don't get along on every issue all the time. That would be impossible. But not generally speaking, we have a good working relationship inside the county and beyond. It's not every county that has that same relationship. And so there are times where things are decided or done that are an area of conflict or frustration with the Department of Municipal Affairs, because things aren't being planned regionally, so there's duplication, potential duplication of costs, potential duplication of capital projects, and there was there are a variety of horror stories that could occur if people aren't working together and talking to each other. So we're never gonna get everybody to agree on what that looks like, but there is a movement afoot to talk about, well, what is it that we can do, not talk about, do, that would make things better? Where are the places where it's so important that we put a stick in the sand and we say, we need to work on this one thing? So the good news is that conversation's happening with the UNSM, the province, and municipality, the AMA, all in the same room. And it's very positive, and it's moving in a way where it's not about conflict, it's about collaboration. So it's work that I'm personally excited about, and as my tenure of VP for the AMA is concerned, I imagine that work will continue past that mandate. So those are the three areas or four, I guess, that I would raise just from the office of the CAO over the past summer.
Thank you. Very good. We'll move on to number 9, other business and for decisions. And the first one is new administration building design. Deputy Warden Muse, would you like to elaborate on that, or would you like to turn it over to Alan, where he was part of the final selection committee with the last two? Or?
I can start if I miss anything.
Okay.
The RFPs came in. There were 10. I think there were 10, and one of them we couldn't open because it was too late, missed the deadline. So what we did is we were asked as a committee to go over and try to basically score these to see. Score the RFPs just to see who was the best. We didn't feel as a committee that we had enough knowledge about that type to do that. So what we did is we gave that to our director of public works and our building inspector, and I think Alain. The three of them sat down, they went over everything where they could score, and they came up with the scores of the top three is what we basically looked at. So what we are recommending is the one who scored the highest wasn't the cheapest, but it was in between, right? So what we came up was with walled salt architecture at a cost of $176,957. They scored top. So I guess the recommendation is that we give the contract to this organization. Now, I don't know if there's any more questions. You all have, it was all emailed to you, so you all have the particulars of where they stood. So, is there anything else that we should add, or we'll just wait to see if they have questions, or?
Just the only thing I'd add is, as part of the evaluation, cost was about 20% of the total score. So how they would approach what their experience was, their ability to communicate effectively with us were some of the things that we measured as part of the evaluations. The average price of the 9 that we looked at was approximately $240,000. So the winner is approximately 60, I guess $70,000, well, 60 and change, lower than the average of the 9. So what happened was there's two amounts that were driving it up or down. Obviously the higher price, unless they, unless they presented something completely different, would be very challenging for the taxpayers to pay the higher price. The lower price ones, there was a couple of lower price ones, they actually didn't meet some of the minimum standards, so they wouldn't have been awarded the job because they didn't fully price the job. So the price that you see isn't necessarily what we would have been billed. So with the experience of the 3, which is our experience is limited amongst the 3 of us, we felt like the evaluations came out as such, and so we Wild Salt being 1 and Leyden Lynch being 2, we then interviewed both companies, and both companies were very, very good, and they were both very willing to come to us for that interview, and they did so quickly. Of that interview, the interview confirmed our higher score, which was Wild Salt Architecture. Some of the things that we shared was like we felt like our culture was very much the same. They live off-grid in rural Nova Scotia. We wanted someone to design something of more of a rural flair as opposed to being heavy on the commercial. So not to suggest the others would have done that. I'm sure the others would have listened to us as well. It's just combining their approach with the price. They were the #1 choice of the 3 of us, and the building committee certainly approved that and recommended it to you. And so that would be the only thing I would add.
Can I ask one question? Were they the only 2 that were invited for an interview?
Yes.
They were the only 2 that were invited, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
The other piece that you should be aware of is many of these companies subcontracted the same engineers and the same subcontract. Like, so a lot of the bids, like for instance, Able Engineering, ABLE, Able Engineering is a common subcontractor on many of those applicants. So that's just for your information.
Interesting.
It wasn't 9 different groups. Many of the groups had similar subcontractors.
So I guess the committee is recommending acceptance of that.
So is that a motion?
I can make that a motion.
Sure,
yes.
why don't you?
Any questions, or let's have a seconder first.
I second that.
Is there any questions on the motion?
Just a comment to the new administrative building committee. Thank you for the work you've done so far. Really, it's not an easy task, I'm sure, to go through all this information and do the right choices. Appreciate it.
In all fairness, a lot of that should go to the staff.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Especially in the final stages of it.
Tough choices, where to spend the money. It's not easy.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Okay, we're gonna move on, as soon as I can find it. 3-year cost agreement for subdivision streets. This is more or less housekeeping, I assume. I went over it this afternoon, and it looks like it needs a lot of signatures. Would you want to elaborate on if anything has changed from the last one?
No, very little has changed to the best of my knowledge. This is it basically allows us the opportunity to request for 50% funding on streets that would be considered subdivision streets. We've never, well, I'd say in the last 10 years, certainly never utilized it. But of course, I would recommend that we sign this to give us the opportunity to engage in that if need be. And there are streets that would fall in the definition.
We have a motion to accept this agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. And moving on to Wedgeport District Amendments, first reading, and it's basically a map, which, Alan, I would have to have you explain how you make an amendment on a map.
That's a good question. So the original bylaw, the Wedgeport wastewater bylaw, restricted the location of where these can go. So the amendment is merely the amendment of the map. And so the map allows, the revision you see allows for anyone in that region to apply and successfully obtain funding for the project, assuming that they qualify for the project. The reason why we're making the amendment is, well, there's two reasons. Number one, we have received applications outside of the region, and we're still below our 44 number. That's the first reason. The second reason would be that the wastewater bylaw is very explicit in which ones we maintain and manage. So we really don't have to restrict certain roads or certain areas. The reason why we restricted it in the first place is because we felt that was the place that needed it the most, and so we wanted to focus in that area. So this is just allowing us to focus a little broader, and so it isn't a very big change. The bylaw is unchanged, only the appendix that refers to where you can, what region can apply. So the map is attached. The previous map was smaller, and the lines were, I can't recall exactly where, but the lines were.
If I may, is it the darker areas, is that the amendment, like the darker area has become larger?
Yes, I believe that is the
Well, I
case.
believe it
Yes.
encompasses
Right to the
most
end.
of Westport now.
So
Yes.
which
On the
one?
main road is.
It's,
Oh, the main
it's
road.
virtually, yeah,
Schmadley's.
yeah.
It used to be just a very small portion of the main road.
Okay.
So it's making this project more available for the residents to apply,
Correct.
That's it.
which is a good thing.
Yeah, we would not have recommended this if we were hitting our maximum
Numbers.
in the original
Yeah.
region. Because again, the purpose of making that smaller was that was the density we felt was most in need.
If I may ask a question, we've talked in the past about, completely fixing the problem, and the engineers designated that first area, the primary area that we were tackling as the most problematic in their view. Right now, we're on a voluntary basis, and although, the decision in the future is ultimately political, whether, what this project looks like in the future, as well as, right now, we had a deadline of 40, was it 44? Or 43? 44?
It was 44, I believe.
44.
44 homes before, I believe, March of 2018, if I'm not mistaken. You don't feel like, I'm just curious, staff never felt as if, broadening the district would affect the possibility of forcing is the wrong word, but, using different measures to ensure that the problem is rectified in that problematic area in the future? Is that something that was considered?
It was considered in the original bylaw wording, and so the bylaw that exists today addresses this. It says that, and I'm just going to find it for you because it's an important question.
Because if we're just, if I may, while you're looking for it,
Sure.
what I'm fearful of is there are people who want to take advantage of this. There are people that see the value, and basically they're getting a septic system for 1/4 of the price, and they're saying, why wouldn't I? However, there's people out there with probably much worse systems who don't want to spend the quarter, who are ruining it for everyone by, dumping in an area where they shouldn't be, which is a visual problem, a smell problem, as well as in the wrong area as a drinking water problem, because you got people dumping near wells. So although it's great that people would take advantage of this, the problem's not fixed until they're all fixed, right? And there's areas that are worse than others, so it's just word of caution, I guess, is what I should mention. But I'm just curious how much it was, considered that in the future, fixing half and half the areas may not be as good as fixing all of them in one area, is what I'm trying to say.
It's a valid observation. It's a valid point. Right now, we are still relying on the volunteer portion. We have issued a tender for, I can't recall exactly the amount, but I believe it's close to 20 So there are already approximately 20 out to tender right now in the region, sporadic. So item 19 of the bylaw says that initial registration shall be voluntary and are subject to the financial constraints of the project as established by council by resolution from time to time. Number 20 says the municipality may require a homeowner to register a property for the sewer project if it can be determined that the failure of the on-site system is contaminating other properties. So if it's only contaminating their own property, we're not prepared
Right.
to lay the hammer down at this time. So the bylaw only allows us to enforce if, in fact, we can prove that it is contaminating other properties. So as the engineers continue their work, we will be identifying the potentially, if we haven't already, I can't confirm that we have, I'll have to inquire of our engineers to see which ones they can see are actively contaminating other properties. If I have a list of those and we're within towards the end of the project, we will have to contact those people in accordance with our bylaw.
All
Because
right.
your point is valid.
But not steering away from, in the future, we may tackle this project, you know, if the problem's not rectified, there's nothing saying, if I'm not mistaken, that we can't, you know, do something similar in the future if the funding were to arise, correct?
That's correct, and what that project looks like and what community it impacts will be up to council, will be up to the funders. And I just also make note that it looks like the March 31st deadline can be extended or shall.
Okay.
There's
I
the
didn't know
potential, but not far, but there's the potential of a small extension, which we will take advantage of if we must.
One more question. Would the Department of Highways property be considered other people's property?
I would say yes.
Okay, like the ditch?
Oh, I
You know, 'cause
not
someone's,
certain.
yeah,
I mean, it's a good question.
there are people that drain right in the ditch, right? That's
Right.
what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, if it drains in their ditch, in the ditch that is in like in the right of way in front of their property, you can be sure that it's contaminating somebody else's property, depending on where the water is flowing.
Okay.
So I would say if they're contaminating the ditch, then they are in fact contaminating at least the ditch and probably more. So, my own, not being a lawyer, my interpretation of that would be that if it's going in somebody else's ditch, that would certainly be considered contamination of another property.
Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think,
It hasn't
if it's happening, I don't think there, and it can be proven, you know, I don't think that there would be too much argument to contrary to that,
Yep,
that was happening.
makes sense. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I guess further to the CN's questions, does the Department of Environment, does that play an effect on somebody's land that is, or somebody's property and their sewer is just going straight, out of straight pipe on the land? Is there a ruling, or is there a law that says they can't do that, or are they grandfathered in, I wonder? Ms. Shedd, do you know
I
that
don't
answer?
know the answer.
Yeah, okay.
They're not grandfathered in. Anybody who, if the Department of Environment receives a complaint
Yes,
that there is solid waste contamination
Being dumped
or,
in.
or wastewater contamination on their property, it gets investigated. And what's found, there might be fines, there might be, I'm not sure how environment would respond, it depends on the situation, but they could be fined or they could be asked to deal with the problem. Now, the fact that we have a bylaw, a wastewater bylaw in that area, it puts us in a not in the same responsibility as Department of Environment, but it puts us as a participant because we are now, we now have a wastewater bylaw, so we have a
Game.
responsibility.
Game.
We're in the game, so
Yeah.
which means we can enforce
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
can't enforce unless we have that wastewater bylaw.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, any raw sewage going into a ditch is designed to eventually lead to a water course, right? So, I mean, it's gonna cause problems if enough is
Absolutely.
being
Right.
emptied into the ditch.
Yeah.
So, we go from here, this is the first read, you need a motion on that?
We do, and then it goes to advertising.
Yes, that's what I thought.
I'll make the motion.
Seconder? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. The next one is directional signage amendment, first reading again. And this is all to do with tourism signs, it looks like it.
Yes, so this is work that has been led by Charlene LeBlanc. This is not the tourism banner.
Yes,
No,
don't
I
worry.
realize that.
This is the tourism signs that, I call them the PEI signs. So,
It's an interesting bylaw, but made for Warren Reed.
it is, so the bylaw is required for us to proceed. This bylaw was the reason why it has taken this long to get any sort of traction. So the Department of Transportation has to be sure that this abides by their regulations, and so there was a lot of back and forth. Also, you know, so the other piece that takes time is requesting permission from landowners to erect signs in or around their property. So all of that is a time-taking process, and this is the last piece. It's the last piece of the process from the perspective of the regulatory side of things. So I don't know how much detail you would want from me around going through this. You haven't had this for a ton of time, and I believe a draft was presented a while back, and this represents amendments to that.
Based on the size of the sign, I visualize this looking something like what they do in Prince Edward Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will be almost identical to that.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a very good idea.
So I believe it holds up to 4 signs per big sign. So like there's the 2 posts, and then there's 4
Yeah.
pretty large signs that are directional. The tourism business is the priority because we had to draw a line somewhere, and the Department of Transportation also had something to say about that. So they didn't want just anything. But it does indicate what businesses do qualify for the signage. It is a pay-to-play, so we pay for the install of the signs, but then we receive, like, we subsidize a portion of the sign, but we also ask the user for money. And so we're responsible for the maintenance, we're responsible for all that. And so that's the difference between some of the signs you see around the tourism organizations across the municipality. They might get a one-time funding for a sign, and it looks great, but then what happens after 10 years is they don't have the money to maintain it. So
I
this,
see you've got a 10-year provision in here,
yes, we do,
Yes.
yeah.
so renewal.
That's correct. So they have to renew after 10 years. So the cost is shared, but we're taking on a section of the cost because not only for the erection, but also for the maintenance.
Very good.
So all the highlighted are changes?
Correct.
or
Those are amendments.
They're amended, these
Those
are
are
all,
actually removed. So all highlighted changes in yellow is what has been removed from the bylaw.
oh, that's been
Oh,
removed?
that's been
correct.
removed.
Yeah, so it no longer says,
Misunderstood.
it no longer
Sorry.
says tourism business, it only says business, and that was a Department of Transportation suggestion, because some of the businesses aren't necessarily just tourism related, such as a golf course, or a fresh food market, or a historical church.
So what,
So all word tourism and the list of initial sites that had been scoped out
Yeah,
are no longer the actual sites. They're listed on the bottom, not highlighted in yellow. So another reason it took so long is we couldn't put the signs in Department of Transportation areas around highways and streets. So Charlene went and got agreements with private property owners to put the signs on their land, which is what is listed. on
I get you.
I believe I was one of those.
Yeah, it is confusing. We should have.
Yeah, I thought
Dash
the
it
yellow
out.
was the stuff that we were
Yeah.
doing
No,
new.
I misspoke.
Yeah, I know you did.
I'm
When you
sorry.
said tourism,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, because I had misunderstood
Yeah,
as
it
You
well.
said tourism, and I
It
said,
was
what?
initially tourism, and then now it's being taken out
Yeah.
by
For everything.
Department of
I get you.
Transportation
Thanks.
suggestion.
Okay.
so the highlighted ones, it says liquor
Removed.
store, gas station, they won't be able to have them, is what you're
That's
saying?
correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
That sucks.
it sucks for gas station owners. I don't know who that might be, but
Yeah.
that wasn't just a decision that we made. It should be clear. Like, that was a decision that was given to us by the
Okay.
department.
Yes.
They had a problem with that, and I can't recall why. So it wasn't a decision we made as staff. It was a decision that the
That was our
department-
initial list, what you see there.
Yeah.
And then they culled it down.
Okay.
If
I don't
somebody had a, if somebody had an ice cream shop somewhere, would they be allowed, I wonder? I don't say ice cream.
I
It
would-
says restaurant though.
Yeah, that would probably fall.
It would pro- it would
Do
prob-
we have
it
a
would
motion for
probably
the first
qualify.
reading on this bylaw? Do we have a seconder?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. By the way, I was number 9 down there, that's where one of my signs are going. Okay. The CAO AMA Conference Attendance. That would be you.
That would be me. So,
Weird.
what's happened in the past is we budgeted conference attendance and it was just part of the budget. I think in light of further transparency and to have council, council, when individual councillors go to a special conference, it's usually brought to this table for decision. I felt more comfortable to ask council for my attendance to AMA, the AMA Fall Conference. I think in the future what would happen is it will be similar to the motions we do at the annual meetings, where like you always say, the FCM dues to be paid for by the so some of those decisions would be made in advance. Not that, so it would be pre-approved as opposed to asking for permission all the time. But seeing as we didn't do that, I guess what I'm asking is for a motion to support my attendance to the AMA conference, which is to be held at the end of September of 2017. And I guess I would be more comfortable with a motion to that effect.
Second. Seconded by Councillor Dion-Tamont, or motion by Councillor Dion-Tamont, seconded by Councillor Digdon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. West Pubnico sewer connection request. This is just routine, but we need a motion.
Correct. Any request that is located more than 150 feet away from the roadside requires council approval. Both the Office of the CAO and the Department of Public Works see no reason to deny this request, and so we're recommending that this be approved by council.
So moved.
Second.
We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Letter to support East Pubnico Wharf Extension. Kathy called me on this matter. She's contacted the office, so it's been attached to the agenda. They're looking for a letter of support for their latest project. I see no problem with issuing this letter of support.
I'll make that a motion.
I'd move. Yes.
All those, it's very well done too.
Yes, it is.
Very well done.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. The next one, letter to MP for income split and changes that affect, I assume affect small businesses. Councillor LeBlanc, you had this put on. Would you like to
Yeah.
speak to it?
Oh, well, it's kind of complex. Typically, it's not common for the municipality to get involved in federal matters. However, this one I felt, and I did receive, it's been kind of coincidental, like I said, typically with federal stuff, you don't hear a lot of phone calls, but I did get a couple phone calls and someone coincidentally stopped me on the side of the street, and I know a little bit about this due to being in the lobster industry, but the new Liberal government has been making a lot of changes, and possibly our CEO might be able to elaborate on this if he's been following it at all. They've been advertising some changes to our taxation system coming up in the future, and one of the things that they have recommended, although they haven't specified just how it would work, and how it would look. But income splitting in some portions of family trust would be targeted. And you're probably wondering why am I bringing this up at the council table, and the reason I am is I feel we should write a letter to our MP basically explaining that we're not in support of this, because although we do need taxes to make the world go around here in Canada, I don't feel for Southwest Nova, and in particular the municipality of Argyle, this would be a good change due to the fact that we hold per capita probably, I mean, I'm just assuming, but we hold per capita probably more than a lot of places in this world, family-owned businesses, because this affects only small businesses, small family-owned businesses that can choose the income splitting options to to make smart business choices and tax decisions. And the reason I feel like it would affect us is any lobster company in this area is a small family operated business, or quite likely would be. So a lot of businesses are structured bearing in mind the future of your children with family trusts and things like that, and their education. And although it's been vague by the federal government, they've announced that sometimes in the near fall that they would send a report, specifying how this would look, and sort of requesting feedback and throwing it out there. So although it's not typical for a municipality to get involved in something like this, compared to another municipality that might have, just an average amount of small family-owned businesses, that, you'll say you'll top somewhere in the world, there's such and such amount. I would assume here in Southwest Nova, because the major economical driver in our area is small independently owned family businesses of lobster fishing outfits, this would not be good for our economy. And how the letter would be worded is something talking to an accountant might be prudent, but if they don't hear from the public, nothing gets, your input doesn't get put in, nothing gets changed. So I'm throwing it out there that we do write a letter to our MP, and he's asking him to send it up the pipeline, stating that as a municipality we don't support any changes to income splitting. That's it.
Councillor Surratt.
I feel that, I guess you may know what you're speaking about, but there's a lot of stuff with trust and this stuff. I certainly like to know more information before I vote to go send a letter about small businesses, pertaining to one side of the industry. Certainly, if you may be an expert or you may not be an expert on it, but certainly I'd like to hear from either an accountant or somebody that's in the business that knows basically the whole school, because right now I got your version and I'm kind of confused on what's going on, and I don't really feel that I can vote on something that I don't want any more information on.
It's
It's
definitely
pretty
not,
vague,
definitely
pretty
not
vague.
an expert, but essentially they want to abolish, from what I can gather, they want to abolish income splitting, which in a small family-run business, you can split the income to have a tax savings. And as far as the factors of how this affects family trust, I know a little less on, but I would presume if you're not comfortable voting this evening, we could wait till early fall, and I'm pretty sure the faith I have in our CAO, he could probably whip up a 2-minute report in probably pretty quickly, given his account.
Because the law hasn't passed yet, or nothing's been done yet, right? Or, we might be voting on something that hasn't passed, or
It's definitely not passed, but that is sort of my intention.
but you're not sure if it's going to
To
go.
put
or
feedback before it does pass.
Yeah.
Councillor News.
It doesn't just affect businesses, it affects families, like family income that can be split as well, right?
True, yeah.
It's the whole thing. It's not a business type of splitting. It's income splitting or income splitting in general, right? And it isn't passed, but if you wait till it is, then it's too late. If you're gonna, if you're going to oppose what they're even thinking about, then you have to do it while they're thinking about it and working on it. My view, anyway. I think income splitting it's good, not just for businesses, but it's good for family income, say it's an income, it's a tax saving benefit that you can use on your income tax, for sure.
When you look at all the inefficient tax systems in place and things that burn up some of our tax dollars, like, you know, we all hear the issues we have with our welfare and, you know,
Mhm.
different systems we have. Don't get me wrong, it's great, but it can be abused as well. Targeting this part of our, you know, taxation system to me seems really awkward and
Yeah.
just not the right choice. And I've been hearing it from, I didn't realize how much it would affect I guess personally you can share income, but as far as small family businesses, it would be extremely detrimental to our area, so. I'll make the motion that we do send the letter prior to the fall, but we send it, you know, as soon as possible, putting our 2 cents in.
I will second that.
Any more questions on that?
I guess being the new councillor, my question would be, is it something that historically a municipality would get into, is sending these letters?
Thank you.
I don't know, I honestly don't know what the answer is on that.
And that could be
Or-
true.
I think if we're starting to start jump into one sector of the fishing, we had the teacher strike, we've got, you know, rebates on fuel, we've got all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think we have probably more important things to do to work on stuff that we know about, stuff we can try to regulate in policies, but try to jump on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence on these issues where I feel we're totally unsure of, we don't have, it's just by speculation. A lot of things can hurt teachers, it can hurt fishermen, it can hurt, you know, truckers. I feel that we're putting our nose in something we don't even belong into, you know. Certainly it hurts sector of the fishing from what Councillor LeBlanc is saying, I certainly understand that, but for us to take a stand on something that I'm not sure where this is going on, can't seem to be able to vote on something like that. Okay.
Any more questions? Would you like to?
There was a question about whether municipalities, you
Yeah.
think we get an answer on that, I don't know.
I didn't.
I think municipalities have traditionally written to their MP or their MLA expressing concern around policy changes. You've done that provincially for sure. It depends on who you're writing to. So I think, you know, in this case, what I'm hearing is that the letter would go to the MP and saying, you know, that expressing a certain level of concern around the income splitting provisions. Now, I'm not that familiar with, like, surprisingly, I'm not that familiar with the income splitting, what portion of the income splitting provisions are being canceled. I know that they had an income splitting provision put in where you could transfer up to $50,000 among family members, but it really wasn't that effective. What Councillor LeBlanc is talking about is like another layer of that, which would allow, like, which could impact family trusts, could impact children's income, etc., not just husband and wife or spouses.
So you're not sure?
I'm not completely aware of the changes, like I can't, because that's my old life, so I haven't really looked into it. I'm happy to look into it and come back to council to get additional information if you're uncomfortable with that. You know, that's not a problem. But I mean, to answer your question, it has been done before, but you do it through your MP as opposed to doing it through, you know, sending it to Revenue Canada.
If I may to help clarify for Councillor Surratt, one thing we do know for sure is that these measures are in place now, and there's no tax savings in this system coming. It's definitely, they're targeting it to dumb it down so that you have less tax savings. That's what we know for sure.
That's what you know for sure then, okay.
There will not be more tax savings.
Yeah.
The system, whether it's kiboshed completely or dumbed down, you know, a significant amount by the way they're talking is what's happening.
Yes, what happened.
So basically, you know, essentially, tax savings are less.
Okay, that helps me a bit.
And people structuring their family trust, especially for children like going off to university and trying to fund that, you know, could be greatly impacted, or will be for sure if these changes come.
Thank you for that.
And just to back up, Councillor LeBlanc, by what I've heard,
Yeah.
it's not a good thing that they're trying to
No,
bring in.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
that, so, but you know,
Yeah.
that was my only question, if it's historically, if municipalities tend to get involved in something like that, but by what I've heard, Mr. LeBlanc is correct on him saying it's not a good thing,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Any more questions on the
Question?
motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Now, the letter will have to be constructed between you and
Yeah.
Alan and maybe emailed out, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure, we would
Everybody
need to overlook it through, and then possibly even an outside opinion, and, send it off.
Okay. Good. Okay, approval of revised certification for the Yarmouth Airport Corporation, a 20-page report. It was a very important report, a lot of work went into this by our CAO, and I cannot get it to load, there it comes. And there's two scenarios, proposed motions. I hope everybody's had a chance to go over this. It's quite an important decision. So, would you like to add to this, or does anybody have any questions? I have had the privilege of talking to Alan about the subject a few times, and so I may be more brief than most of you, but any questions to our CAO, if you can clarify? Councillor Surratt.
I'll start off. I've got a bunch of questions, but I'll start off by asking, is this the same? At first, when I started reading, I thought we had an agreement that went for 4 years. And I said, this is a new agreement, so what's happening to that old agreement? But after reading 2 or 3 times, this is the same agreement, but you're changing the airport and liaison committee?
Yes, yes. So you're referring to the intermunicipal agreement that's attached to the back of the report?
Right on.
Yes, that is the
Thank
same
you.
4-year agreement that
Yeah.
we signed a little less than 3 years ago.
That's right.
And we are amending that agreement, which again, still has the same deadline.
Yes.
And the proposal is to eliminate the liaison and oversight committee and to blend the liaison and oversight committee with the board of directors. And there are a variety of reasons why we feel like that's a good decision for us right now. One is that there's a lot of delay between decision-making when you have to always ask, if, we're asking, the teenager feels like they have freedom, but then they have to ask mom and dad for everything. Like, that's basically how it was. That's a simplified version of what was happening. So we needed to have that collaboration come together as opposed to being two. The other thing is there are very important financial decisions that need to be made by the board that have a direct, significant impact on the owners, and that is challenging when there's a lot of risk for additional funding. So I'll compare this to YASTA, for instance. YASTA has a board that operates primarily with tourism stakeholders. It has a budget, that costs us about $60,000 a year. The worst case scenario is that would go to maybe 64. So this is an entirely different scenario involving capital infrastructure renewal that has complexity, that involves 3 units, and so we really need to get closer to the decision-making table. So that's why that is being proposed. The work of the changes of the amendment of the
Yes.
report that you're referring to was done by CAO Gushu, and I have reviewed his work, and you see my little pencil
I've seen that,
scratches. I had very little changes to his work. It does represent what the liaison and oversight committee discussed with the remaining board members.
Number 2 question, if you, Mr. Chair, I have 2
Yes.
questions. What happened to the closer that was hired? I
He
know
or
this might
she-
be going on, but you'll
No.
come back to what,
That person was not hired.
that's what I thought. What happened to our money?
The money is still committed. There's been the money hasn't moved. So the money's still in the coffers of each municipality. Based on where we are now, I have recommended that we have to hold and reconsider what that money ought to be used for. And so there's been no decision on that, and there's been no engaging a third party to execute that work for some of the reasons that are in the report.
Right.
That some of the things that have to be addressed prior to us going after economic development opportunities.
So the closer, when we had made that decision to advance the money, to myself, and maybe you can correct me, I thought if that money isn't spent on that, it should come back in our coffers.
It never left our coffers.
It never left our coffers. So you said that the money, we have to decide what we're gonna do. So that doesn't mean it's committed there.
It
It's
is,
not,
what,
unless there was a closer hired.
yeah, there is no commitment, there is no closer, right? So and so initially it went to the Western Wren for consideration, and then much changed at that time, right? So we had some transit, we're going through a transformation at the airport, I think is the best word to use. So certainly that money hasn't moved, and no municipality has moved it. And this is a common question that's being asked by the decision makers around tables, like, we made a special agreement to do this, where is it?
Yeah.
And the answer is it's nowhere just yet, and for good reason.
And number 3 is, I see that 2 board members offered their resignations in the past 14 days, and I'm not here to ask who they are, doesn't bother me one bit who it is, but is it, and maybe you can't answer this, is it because somebody wasn't agreeing with other people, or did they just walk out over an argument, or were they booted out, or? We can't name names, I realize.
No, I can name names. I can name names. I mean, there were 4 board members,
Yes.
and they submitted their resignations to the Liaison and Oversight Committee in a public format. So it's a public resignation.
Yes.
The chair, Irene Donthermo, resigned, and she cited reasons of being busy, as she is the chair of the Tourism Nova Scotia, and that has taken a lot of her time. Her resignation was very positive. The letter was positively written. She just recognized that she just did not have the time, and she also knew that there was a transformation coming, and she couldn't be in a situation where she couldn't contribute effectively. She offered her help in any way, shape, or form to help us in the future. It was a very gracious and positive resignation. The second was the same. It was Dr. Saim who resigned, and he just again he saw I think he recognized that some of his ideas for that airport was not congruent with some of the federal and provincial funding models. So he felt less effective as a board member, and he decided that perhaps he could offer his help in another way. So, and the 2 remaining board members are still eager and wanting to work together to find a solution. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
they were positive.
Good.
It was positive. It was all positive. It is I will say that it's complicated and therefore frustrating at times to have conversations around the airport through this transformation. We have to remember we had 4 volunteers around the table that were asked to do a big job, and I think that changing the governance is going to help the volunteers feel more supported in that.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else want some clarification on what a 301 and a 302 certification is?
I was just wondering if CAO News could, just for the public that may be watching, explain the CAO's recommendation
Absolutely.
and why, that's all.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem. So, and we're talking about liaison and oversight committee for the public. Basically, what that is a group of councillors that are not directly involved with the airport, but that liaise or communicate with the board in order to make sure that their decisions are respecting the contract that we have between the 3 units. So that organization, that group, met with the board, and were met with and also met with Transport Canada, and Transport Canada has a number of items that they are now requiring the airport to comply with. This is not new. This is a situation where, and I don't want to over dramatize what has happened here, because in reality, the regulatory requirements under section 302 of the regulations is the same for Stanfield Airport as it is for the Yarmouth Airport. So if you look at it through that lens, understand that we are a much smaller organization and we're a much smaller airport attempting to comply with 302, which is a very high standard. So one of the major things that the standard actually tries to do is to create what's called a safety management system, or SMS system. That particular system is a self-auditing system. So what the airports are supposed to do, if you're at 302, regardless of what the size is, you have to have that resourced, and you have to go do audits. You have to do a self-audit. So Transport Canada knows that that is a very, very high standard. They were very honest and said it's kind of unfair on small airports. And so the question is essentially, why do we need to be at 302? That's the question. So eventually, if you don't comply with 302, you get forced out of 302. That's how it works. It's an airport. It has to be safe. And I'm not suggesting it's unsafe. I'm saying that the standard is very, very high, and it's up to the airport manager, to determine the safety and security of runways and of the operations. And so he does that in collaboration with Transport Canada. That is not a decision that's made at the board level or at the owner's level. Questions of safety are never overridden by those groups. I just want to be very clear about that. So at the end of the day, the only reason why airports retain 302 is if they require or want or have regular passenger service. So that is the only reason why airports are required to meet that standard. If they are not, there's actually another reason, but it's not as important. It talks about built-up area. So that being said, I'm trying to keep it simple, so I'm not going into too much detail, but if we are unable to obtain regular passenger service or unwilling to obtain regular passenger service, there would be no need for us to be at a 302. We could go to a 301. Right now, Transport Canada is saying you need to go temporarily to a 301 because you have some issues you need to address as an airport. And so this comes to no surprise. It is not tragic. It is not overly dramatic. It is what it is. So my recommendation is the recommendation that was unilaterally accepted and come to by the Liaison and Oversight Committee, is that you can decertify or reduce your certification from 302 to 301. It has zero impact on our current traffic. We don't have regular passenger service. We have 1,600 flights in and out per year. A lot of them are safety, government, and life and limb related flights. They will be completely unimpacted by the decertification of 302 to 301. That does not impact their ability to land there. They land, Port Hawkesbury is a 301 airport, and they accept flights of safety nature all the time. What these certifications do is it informs the pilot what they're landing on. What is the standard that the pilot is getting into when he or she is approaching the runway? So if you're at certification 302, they expect, as the pilot, because the pilot ultimately has the decision to land or not land. That's his or her decision. So how they approach and the decision to land, all of those things factor in the fact that, oh, this is a 302. Well, if you're at 302 certification but you're not meeting that certification, the pilot is coming in with an expectation that is different than the reality. And so if it's 301, it informs the pilot in a very accurate way that says, okay, it's 301. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it isn't safe. That's not what it's suggesting. It's suggesting that the pilot has to make a decision at a different point in the air as opposed to 302. That's really what it comes down to, because the pilot has the responsibility ultimately to make that decision to land or not land based on the conditions that he or she is presented with.
Very, very interesting.
So the decertification from 302 to 301 has zero impact on our current airport operations. we cannot have regular passenger service unless we go back up to 302,
Which is very possible.
which is possible, but requires us to put more funds in the capital, in the capital requirements, and so that's the work that's happening now. I just received information. Okay, great. I just received information that I will be updating you. Facebook Live, love it. So that's the situation, and so from our perspective, going to 301 does not preclude us the opportunity to go back to 302. We can do that, but again, it requires a capital injection. Now, the capital injection is not something that is new. We have attempted to get to that either through meetings with our federal and provincial counterparts or understanding what's out there. So some of you with the airport have heard the word ACAP, which is capital assistance. It's a known policy that Transport Canada has, but it only supports airports with regular passenger service, moving at least 36 months in a row, moving at least 1,000 passengers a year, and that it's regular schedule. We don't have that right now. So what's happening now is what Transport Canada is asking us to do is in a time frame that is shorter than the time frame that we can get that funding. So any funding that we are looking at to improve the airport right now comes from either political intervention, federal, provincial, reduced operating costs so that we can maintain a level of funding and then pay off debt over time. So, assuming that could be an even number, I can't confirm that. And the third is, of course, from municipalities. So we're either borrowing to pay later, we're getting the funds from other levels of government, or we're opening up funds through a major restructuring of the airport operations. That is the long-term decisions that you will be presented as owners. We don't have enough information to present what each of those look like, and they really depend on what the collective vision is of the owners around how you want to use the airport in the future. That will define what you may have an idea of what you want as the airport, but the money attached to that may not be realistic, and so we have to take a look at multiple options, okay? That's a lot of information, and I realize some of that is in the report, but as Councillor Digdon stated, it would be important for the residents to understand where we are, and we are in transformation, and there's been no talk at the board or at the L&O committee about airport closure. It has been about airport restructuring, airport transformation. What can we do differently in this new environment?
Councillor LeBlanc.
I've been attending some of the meetings. I did miss the first one where our CEO did make his presentation. However, I have read it, and it's quite clear what needs to happen here. Not that our choices are limited, but our choices are squeezed a little bit. Surrendering from a 302 to a 301, in my point, isn't exactly, it does close one door, but it's not exactly a discouraging thing. It's possibly even starting the conversation that maybe we've been having with ourselves in our head. Again, I'm not talking one bit remotely about a closure of an airport, but as our CEO worded it, a restructuring for something maybe in the future that would be more cost effective and still providing the essential services to our area. So the suggested motions that our CEO made are spot on. So I will do that now. I'd like to speed things up. So I move to surrender the 302 certification voluntarily and commit to a 301 for the Yarmouth International Airport.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have any questions on the motion?
I guess on that part, I'll wait.
Councillor Sir.
No, I'll wait till the next motion. I've got some questions, but I think I see two motions. I think Councillor
There is,
LeBlanc.
yeah.
Yeah, I there's not a question, no.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all set there. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
So, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Secondly, I move to authorize the amendments to the Airport International Intermunicipal Agreement, sorry, it's a mouthful, to allow for changes to the governance structure of the airport.
And I'll second that.
Councillor Surratt.
I've got
On the motion.
three items on the motion. I guess, first of all, I'd like to thank Alain, our CAO, for all the work he's done on this. You know, I had a few little talks with him on some stuff, and he's taken the bull by the horns, and I know I'm tooting your horn, Alain, I know you probably don't like it, but, you know, really, there had to be some decisions made here, and you've certainly, you know, done a leadership role. I'd like to thank Lucia and Danny also at the meetings, to be there to, you know, to see some of this stuff. It's not easy. After 9 years, we've been pounding on this airport, and it's from one, I'm not going to say disaster to the next, but it seems we're making 1 foot ahead and 2 feet back in some instances, with whether it be managers or decisions we've made, and it's been very frustrating with the money we spent. Which brings me to this, with a 302 to 301 designation, which we've just passed, that we've approved, the amendment that we're planning to vote on, I would like, I can't support that amendment at the moment, and again, I'll hear from everybody else, I still see $770,000 in the pot. And that's what my disagreement is I say disagreement, that I don't understand. If we're going to the 301, I would feel, why do we need 770? Can we, is there room there to go to 150 apiece? Maybe I'm going too low. Don't get me wrong. I stand for all of you to talk to me and hear from you guys. But why do we still need 770? Why can't we go down? What am I saying? Why can't we lay off staff? I mean, every job counts, I understand, and anybody listening out there that I'm talking about them losing their job. But we only have so much money in the pot. We're talking about, in our own municipality, about sidewalks in areas where we don't have money to support it and that. You know, instead of paying $300,000 or 250, can't see set, 250,000 this year, you know, go to 150. Maybe we could put sidewalks, lights in some places, like I've heard from the Pubnico area where there's sidewalks. And, you know, I'm just throwing something out. It could be used for a number of things. But I feel that 770 is high. And while we're at the amendment stage, couldn't we amend that? Or could we have a look? Can we go lower to that? Why was that number still there? I guess.
That was 25 questions, you got that?
I think I got it. And it's a perfectly valid observation. And I think that from an administrative perspective, I mean, it's obviously a decision, a political decision, but from an administrative point of view, I think you've raised an issue that needs to be addressed now.
Yeah.
We don't know that minimum funding, that minimum funding of 770 was under a different scenario, right? So I think that, I don't know what that number is, but I think saying that a minimum of 770 is our current reality, that may or may not be true. So I think, you know, I strongly agree with your observation.
Yeah.
It's an observation that obviously we didn't pick up on. I think it's something that needs to be addressed amongst the three. So from an administrative perspective, I would agree that needs to be changed because it's our new reality, but I don't know that we can put an amount there right now. And so the risk is if we put no amount, then there's no commitment, right? But perhaps there's a way to alleviate that somewhat is to say that that the three commit to reducing that, or once we know what that looks like, because I can't change the number to a lower number and with confidence. Like I can't say, well, it's going to be this, but
council could.
Yes, council could, but keep in mind that this amendment has to be agreed upon by the three, and we cannot, this is an agreement that the three municipal units cannot get out of by virtue of how we wrote it. So I think what we can, to address your point, which is a valid point, would be to loosen the language around it being the minimum funding.
Right,
And that it would, then that the wording be amended to allow a lesser amount based on the new
Yeah.
certification.
Yes,
So even if we said the municipalities would commit to a minimum funding of 770 for the YIC per annum for the 4-year term, and that amount be reduced in accordance with any reduction in certification, I think would probably address your issue.
it would. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Okay, I just, if I had a number for you, I would tell you,
Yeah.
right? But I don't, and I can't really, we can't unilaterally come up with that number. It's a number that the three units really should come up with in terms of the relationship.
Do you have like a, probably, and I know you probably don't from hearing you, like a 12-month projection? Listen, we need to fix the runway, we have to have another this, another that. You really don't have that at the moment.
Not yet, but.
Just your budget.
Not yet, but my intention was, I had to deal with another airport issue today, but
Yes.
my intention is to meet with the manager tomorrow.
Yes.
He's already started that work, and
Okay.
we're gonna be working side by side to try to bring that information up as quickly as possible.
Yeah. If we could add that in the motion, I would like it, but I don't know, somebody else wants to speak on that, or?
Well, we have a motion on the floor. We'll ask our expert, Chris, on Robert's rules, how we would add to the motion that's already existing.
Would have to make a motion to amend the previous motion. So someone would have to make a motion and second it and vote on that motion to amend the original motion. Then you can vote on the amended motion afterwards.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to, I can't make an amendment because there's already a motion.
Yes, you
Make a
can.
motion to
Make a
make an amendment.
motion to amend.
To amend
Make
that, yeah.
Thank you, guys, for straightening me up. I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion that's on the floor that will say that,
We'll wait till after we get from.
okay, thank
Need
you.
a seconder.
Okay,
Well, we need to know what the motion is.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, we don't have a
We need to know
motion
what-
yet if we don't have a second.
right.
No, but we need to know what he's amending,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we need to hear what he has to say.
Right.
We need-
Yeah, very good. So to amend the motion that says, amend the, allow for changes for the governance structure of the airport, the amount of money spent, the 770,000 minimum, will be lower, if possible, hold on here. The amount of, the 770 minimum could be less? Would that be a word, Alain? Would be less?
If the funding's not needed, is that what you mean?
If we don't need the 770,
The minimum amount shall be amended, if the certification, if the airport certification is
Approved.
surrendered.
surrender.
Say that again?
Yeah,
The minimum amount shall be amended.
Okay,
So the first sentence is the
Yeah,
minimum amount will be
yeah.
770, period. The second sentence with the minimum amount shall be amended or may be amended.
Okay, maybe.
Maybe.
shall
Maybe.
be,
Yeah,
shall
maybe is better.
Basically means,
It's going
I guess you could amend it by $1 if you wanted.
Yeah.
right.
But I think you have two issues on the table right now. The second, I believe the one we're on there now, is to move to authorize amendments to the airport intermunicipal agreement to allow for changes to the governance structure of the airport.
That's
The
it.
governance structure.
That's
So-
right.
So that there is your first issue. Now, the
Yes.
second one, I believe, would have to come in play for the money on a different, motion.
Okay.
I agree with that
think so too,
assessment.
because
I-
all-
Okay, very good.
Because your issue is not on this motion.
No.
No,
Your issue
No.
is not relating to governance, it's related to funding. So you
Thank
can
you.
pass the original motion without an
Good point.
amendment, and then you can pass a second motion or make a second
Make a
motion
second motion, yeah.
addressing the.
Very good,
fiscal-
thank you.
Are we clear? We didn't have a
Yeah.
seconder on the almost amended motion. So we can go back to the first motion that's still on the floor. So we will vote on the first
What-
motion.
is there a point of order, sir?
I just want to make sure that the motion that is going to be made has nothing to do with amendments to the intermunicipal agreement.
That's right.
Has
No.
nothing to do with it. Okay.
It,
Well,
Because
it
if
does-
it does,
it
it has
does,
to be
but
included
it
in the
does.
first
Authorize-
motion.
It has,
amendment.
it has an impact on the intermunicipal agreement for sure. The motion that has been made refers to the,
Authorizing amendments to the intermunicipal agreement
for,
For the governance structure.
to allow for
Yeah.
change. Right.
to the governance structure. So
But it's
a
still
s-
talking about authorizing amendments to the intermunicipal agreement in general, then specifies the governance structure. But if you're talking about making amendments to the intermunicipal agreement, you have to include all of the amendments being
Okay.
authorized in one motion
Okay.
to make sure
Because
that
in that motion, there's a 770 that's involved in it.
is involved in authorizing the amendments to the
Yeah,
intermunicipal.
because in that agreement, the 770 is written there,
Yeah.
in that.
A question, I have a question.
Council, yes, Councilor News.
We are one of three. And we can authorize that and add that, but it doesn't mean it's gonna pass because we're only one of three motions, right? The other two units have to agree with the same thing as we're agreeing. So what happens in the case that we do that,
Yeah.
and they've had their meetings and they've already approved it, where does it go from there?
Great point. It's a great point.
Because according to what I read, it has to be a unanimous decision to make those changes.
Correct.
And that, but what Councillor Surratt is talking about, at the time that comes up, I'm definitely behind you 100%. We have to look at getting a better deal, I think, or getting, it's costing this municipality right now, based on the 770,000 and our percentage of portion, and that's $611 a day, every day of the year. And that's a lot of money. I think we have to look at that serious, as to how long we can keep going with that much money.
Some
Um,
clarification.
Clarification, I believe that, Chris's, the clerk's points are valid. The risk of putting it all in one motion is that on the issue of funding, where there might be disagreement, it will stop all other amendments to the governance structure. So because we're having conversations about funding, it will actually stop any other amendment to the intermunicipal agreement. So my suggestion is, while I believe Chris is correct technically, I believe that any sort of intermunicipal amendments that you are requiring, you have to be careful not to put them all in one, because none of them will change. So if the council's position is that no changes are made until the funding is addressed, then you put it in one motion. If the council's position is that you wish for the governance to move ahead so that we can have people making decisions, and at the same time address the funding issue, then you make them two separate amendments by two separate motions. Because this one requires discussion and collaboration with the other two members, unless you're trying to take a position on the financial things without your partners collaborating, which councils do. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad idea. I'm saying that that's what happens. If you put it all in one, you're saying nothing happens until we deal with this funding issue, or until we make this modification of the funding issue. So that might be your position, but I'm just saying, you put it in one, that's what will happen. You put it in two, this one goes ahead. This one, you might say, with consultation with the other two partners.
Exactly, because.
So it depends on what you want.
Didn't we,
Good point.
in our group, did we not agree that we would recommend this to council?
Yes,
As it was presented?
Yes, the liaison and oversight asked for this work to be done. CAO Gushu took the leadership role in that change, and the funding piece was not discussed
Was not
in that
discussed at
amendment.
all. Right.
Okay, it is fundamentally part of the long-term solution of the airport. There's no question. So I don't, if you wish to address it and you don't want to stop the other stuff,
Right.
you can still do that by motion.
But I think it's important to get the governance part of it dealt with now, because at this point,
That
there's
needs
no,
to happen.
there's no decision-making body. We don't have a board anymore. We've got two people.
But what happens, to your point, which was, I thought was a great point, if we agree with the funding and the other two partners don't, that's gone, 770, here we go. Isn't that the truth?
I'm not
It
sure
was a
how
great
that
point, Danny,
works.
you brought.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that one works.
Right now, your agreement says that there is a minimum funding of $770,000. It doesn't say how that gets spent.
No.
It doesn't say anything about it being capital or operations. It says that every year there has to be a minimum of 770. And that was to protect the current operations of the airport based on its current condition at 302,
Yes.
right? I think Guy's amendment, quite frankly, is an important amendment because it highlights, it really highlights your position as a municipal council around the airport, saying that it's important, but we have to re-examine that piece. So if that's the political piece that you want to do, without stopping the other piece, make it two motions. And so the original amender, I think this is getting complicated,
I know.
right? The original amender can make a choice, right? Now, so we have already passed the first motion
No, we
that
haven't.
talks about the,
Yes.
about the
Yeah.
decertification. We have not, we are discussing the motion to amend as presented. So if it is the original, if it is your intent to put it all in one, then you would ask for a motion to amend the original, and that gets seconded or it doesn't. If it does, it gets voted on, and if it gets rejected, it means, to me, it means that council wants to make the governance change first. And then, as the original, and then of course the amendment dies, and then the original motion gets voted on.
Right.
You then have the right, as a secondary option, to, and I'm looking at you because
Yeah, I know
you're the
that.
one raising it,
No,
right?
no,
So
that's okay.
you then have a second option to say, look, we want modifications to the funding wording, and we want you to go and make that change as part of the whole amendment, with collaboration with your partners.
Partners, yeah.
And then, so, at that point, you're basically saying, look, we want that change regardless, but we're not gonna hold back progress
Progress, yeah.
by the governance progress
Yeah.
with this issue.
Yeah.
So I think what you'll, anyway, that's as best as I can explain it.
No, you brought it well. Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So if one person votes nay on the motion that's on the floor, Councillor Digdon said it doesn't pass?
No, I said to change this agreement that we're locked into here now,
Yeah.
and that with the two other, with the town and with the other municipalities.
Well, it has to be unanimous,
It
three
has to be
units.
unanimous.
The
Yeah.
three
Yeah,
units.
according-
Thank you very much.
According to what I read.
I
in
thought it
this
was us.
report.
The
Just
three
us, yeah.
units, it doesn't have to be unanimous in this,
Yeah.
Thank you.
No.
but the three
No.
units
Thank
have
you.
to agree.
Agree.
You
That's
understand?
right.
Yeah,
That's right,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Question?
Question on the original motion then.
Original motion, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
I'd like to make a motion to, would it be, I'd like to amend?
No.
Or, no, a motion that we look at the minimum amount, you'll have to help me on this one. The minimum amount
Of funding
of funding,
as a secondary amendment
as a secondary amendment to the,
to the intermunicipal agreement,
right,
conditional on the other two parties.
conditional.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not putting words in
No,
your, I'm
no.
not trying to, but
No, but no, this
we've
is
been
what I
talking about
want.
it long enough.
I didn't know how to put it, I didn't know how to put
Is
it.
that,
No, that's right where I want it.
is that what you intended?
Yeah, if somebody wants a second, that's what exactly I intended. I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
If I may, I'm just wondering, technically though, are we locked into this agreement and that at the 770,000 for another?
We are locked, we cannot, yes, we are locked
Yes,
in
we
the
are.
agreement unless the three agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the other two, that's why I think it's, I know actually the motion hasn't been seconded, so.
Yeah,
No.
we can't discuss, we need a second.
I'll second his motion.
Now we can
Now we
discuss
can
the
discuss
motion.
So, yes,
Sorry.
so only
Sorry
if
for
the
that.
three agree.
Okay.
at this point. Can we
Yes.
address that issue?
Okay.
And can be addressed quickly as part of those amendments.
Sure. Okay.
I think from a practical perspective, we would get the board, if the 3 municipal units had made an approval, we would get the board moving immediately, right? And that the funding piece, there's a chance that there would be some delay on the other 2 parts. And so we would delay the actual amendment. We wouldn't do 2 amendments, we'd do all 1, assuming everybody would agree.
Thank you. Any more questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? I'd like to thank the CEO and the clerk for clarifying this up. It turned into be quite a mess.
We got it straightened out.
Just on that, before we move on from that
Really?
topic, yes, I know, I apologize, Mr. Chair, Mr. Warden. There was information that came from Facebook Live. Further to CAO Muse's information, we board members, the chair of the Liaison and Oversight Committee, Mayor Mood, received the other 2 resignations today, and they stated they simply wanted to make the path clear for the new governance model, and of course, more than willing to serve on the new
Oh
board.
my God.
So that was just to get out of the way,
Yeah.
make it new,
Let it go.
and
And
so
bring us
it,
back
Start
on.
new.
so it
Great
just,
to hear.
yeah, it shows that they're interested in moving together, so it's great.
Okay. Now
Thank
with
you.
with the new governance, do we
Yes.
have to elect a board member here now?
Yes, I would say that you do. I believe we said one member
Instead
from
of 2,
each?
there's 2 in the liaison, but they were saying that with the board, with public participation as well, that they felt that probably there would be 4 from the public and 3, which makes a board of 7.
Correct.
Which was 1 from each district.
That's correct. So I think it would be appropriate to
Elect a
make
board
that
member.
motion, and of course, that motion would be conditional on the amendments, right?
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Lucy and Danny have been out there. I mean, they know the scoop of what's going on. You know, certainly keep it up.
But
Can
we
we
can't
have
go 2.
one?
We just want 1.
That's what I want, yeah.
Could we have one though and an alternate?
Yes.
Because it's always good to have,
And that's what
if
we
we've
we
got
discussed
representation
as well.
coming from the
Oh,
municipality,
yeah.
I feel as though if one can't make it, somebody
Yes.
there should be an alternate.
What do you wanna do?
I can move to ask Lucia. Do you want?
I don't mind doing it,
I'll
I've
make a
been there
motion.
for a while, but I'm the one that often needs an alternate, you know, it's like fishing season time, right? So, is it prudent to put me as the alternate, or is it prudent, I would do it. It's just I'm gonna probably need a fishing season time, and then it depends. Who knows, our government structure might change by then, but what do you guys think? I don't know.
I certainly move to ask Lucia to go back on, you know.
Yeah, that's
Keep
fine,
set.
yeah. As long as we have an alternate, that works with me.
Do we need a seconder for that,
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
I'll second that.
You have a seconder, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Now we need an alternate. Are you willing to serve as an alternate?
I'll serve as an alternate.
You need a motion.
So, oh,
Yeah, the Danny be our alternate.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
aye.
Against? Motion carried. We have a new board. Or our part of the board, anyhow, I should say. Correspondence, building committee permits, comparisons for June and July. We received them quite some time, or a while ago by email. Department of Municipal Affairs, federal infrastructure funding. That's just for information. Does anybody have any questions on that or want to bring it up for conversation? Hearing nothing, we'll move on. The financial requests, we have none this evening. Agenda topics for next meeting or notice of motions by councillors. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up in September? Nothing? Question period. Any questions from out in the YouTube world, I believe? Media? We have an in-camera session, so we need to have a motion to go in camera.
So move.
Second.